Hey guys, this is the ultimate budget lens guide for the A6000, A6300, and A6500. Now before I get started, I want to say a couple of things which I think are important. Both professional photographers and casual photographers shoot with different purposes in mind. So while some lenses may be useful for some, for others they may not be useful. I, for example, never shoot sports photography, so I have no need for a telephoto lens. So in this list, there will be no telephoto lenses. This entire list of recommendations is based on my preferences and my first-hand experience with each of these lenses. The last thing that I will say is that tastes change and new lenses come out all the time. So while you may find some of these lenses not appealing at this point in time, in the future you may find these lenses useful. I remember when I first started getting into photography, I had no idea what I was doing, and I really genuinely believed that prime lenses were a complete waste of money. You only have one focal length. Why wouldn't you spend the same amount of money on a lens with a zoom range? It was only after first-hand experience of using zooms and primes and comparing those results and seeing the effectiveness of a prime lens that I genuinely grasped this idea that there is something to say for shooting primes. Let's start by talking about the 16 to 50 millimeter kit lens. There's a lot of negativity online, a lot of hatred towards this small compact pancake lens, and I personally don't think it's warranted. I think that the kit lens is a great performer given the price. The kit lens provides you with a decent zoom range, optical steady shot, and while it won't produce some bokeh-licious background because it's not fast, it still gives you decent all-around performance. If you are just using an A6000 or an A5100 for vlogging, the kit lens is perfectly adequate. And surprisingly, in my comparisons of the kit lens to various other lenses, including the Zeiss 16 to 70, the differences are very, very slight, nowhere near what the price differential would suggest. So what if you really just hate the kit lens and want to replace it? The best kit lens replacement that I have tested is the Sony 18 to 105G. Now the 18 to 105 gives you a wider range. So you get 18 to 105 versus 16 to 50, and it is also a constant f4 aperture. So that means it is slightly faster than the kit lens, especially on the telephoto side. Why wouldn't I pick the Zeiss? Well, besides the obvious quality control issues, the Zeiss falls apart after 50 millimeters. If you compare the Zeiss at 70 millimeters to the Sony 18 to 105 at 70 millimeters, the Sony is the better lens. So what you're paying for in the Zeiss is $800 for a lens that performs maybe 10 to 20% better than your kit lens, not enough to justify the huge price difference. So my recommendation is the Sony 18 to 105. It costs less, and I think it is a better lens, especially if you are using it for video. Next, everyone needs a good prime lens. My favorite prime lens and my favorite lens for the Sony A6000 is the Sony 35mm f1.8. That's the SEL35 f1.8. Why not the Sony 50mm f1.8 prime? I think that on a crop sensor, APS-C sensor, the 50mm is too much. It's so difficult to get things in your shot, especially if you are using the lens to take portraits. Inside, it's almost impossible to use the 50mm lens. The 35mm lens, although difficult, is a lot more usable indoors, and the quality is about the same. I'd say that the 50mm is slightly sharper, but the 35mm is slightly faster at focusing. Yes, there is a large price difference, but I do believe that the 35mm is worth the $400 price tag. I also prefer the Sony 35mm over the Sigma 30mm f1.4. Even though the Sigma is a sharper lens and a faster lens, the Sony makes up for it with better focusing, more accurate and faster, and optical steady shot that is built in. So if you are using it for video, the Sony 35 is definitely the better bet. If you are strictly using the prime for photography and you are okay with manually focusing some of your shots, buy the Sigma and save $100. If you simply need a good portrait lens for outdoor use, The Sony A6000 f1.8 is a great lens, as well as the Sigma 60mm f2.8. Both are sharp, both produce great colors, and the autofocus is slightly better on the Sony, so if you are using it for video, I would stick with the Sony. However, if you are using it just for pictures and you're okay with manually focusing, I think that the Sigma wins in that regard. What about Sony wide-angle lenses? Well, the Sony 10 to 18mm is a bit of a disappointment. Unfortunately, Sony quality control is not the best when it comes to the 10 to 18mm lens. My recommendation is the Rokinon 12mm f2, which is a manual-only focus wide-angle lens that is around $300, so it's significantly cheaper than the Sony and offers, in my opinion, better optics and better performance. There are a few users out there that may benefit from having the Sony 10 to 18mm if you need the ultimate widest lens and you need autofocus. Now, you may have noticed I left off a lot of adapted lenses, so lenses where you can buy a converter and use a Canon lens on your A6000. The problem is, for casual users, there are too many drawbacks with using adapted lenses. Now, for professionals, you may be able to use an adapted lens with a speed booster and manually focus and achieve amazing results. But for the casual user, after spending hundreds of dollars on a lens, you really just want one that works. And the only true way to get that is to buy a native E-mount lens. The adapters are great, they are certainly fun, but they always give you some sort of variation and mixed results. So that is my list of recommended lenses for the Sony E-mount system. How should you go about buying lenses for your E-mount system? I'd recommend one at a time. If you're just starting out, stick with the kit lens for a little bit. Learn how to use it, see what focal range you tend to take more pictures with, and then tailor your buying decisions around that focal range. For example, if you find that you are shooting the majority of your shots at 50mm, then maybe look at buying the 50mm Sony Prime. If I had to sell all of my lenses and only keep two of them, I would keep my kit lens and the 35mm Sony, because I use the 35mm f1.8 for about 95% of my YouTube video. This entire video was shot with the Sony 35mm. Also, I want to say something about Sony product support. From my limited experience with them dealing with the 10 to 18mm lens that was decentered from the factory and I purchased brand new, their product support team is really quite ineffective. And it's saddening to say that, because my experiences with Canon have been nothing but spectacular. I say that not to discourage you from buying Sony lenses, but just be careful with who you buy from and make sure that if a warranty is important to you, you are not out buying the international copies of those lenses that are for sale. My recommendation is stay with an authorized reseller. Buying on Amazon, where you can return it if there's something wrong with the lens, is always a good idea. So that is going to be it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed it and learned something. Now, as I mentioned in the beginning of the video, tastes change and new lenses come out all the time. I will try my best to stay on top of things, and as soon as I see more interesting lenses come out on the market, I will certainly be buying them and reviewing them on this channel, so stay subscribed. Thank you guys for all of your likes and all of your support. If you have questions about the lenses that I discussed in this video or any other lenses, be sure to comment those down below. I will also be including links to Amazon for all of my recommendations in the description below, so check those out. And if you do buy through those links, it does help support the channel, so thank you guys. Thank you guys for watching, thanks for all the support, and have a nice day. Bye-bye.